Once I picked up the telephone to invite my son Max while his wedding might be. My daughter in regulation Lena regarded me proper in the attention and stated with a chilling smile, "Oh, we already got married the day past. We most effective invited unique people." The words hit me like a bucket of ice water. Special people. I who for 3 years had paid their monthly rent of $500, offered every piece of furnishings of their residence, and crammed their fridge after they had nothing to consume. I used to be now not a special character. I stood there inside the residing room of my very own house, keeping the telephone as if it weighed 1,000 pounds, looking my son avoid my gaze at the same time as Lena made herself comfortable on the couch I had offered for them. The light red dress I had picked out for her wedding hung uselessly in my closet, alongside the new shoes and the illusion of being a part of the maximum crucial day of my simplest son's existence. I had spent $200 on that get dressed, considering how exceptional I might appearance in Max's wedding photos, images in which I would never seem. For weeks, I had planned each element. I had put money apart to provide them $1,000 as a marriage gift. I had known as my sister Diana in Chicago to inform her the good information. I had cleaned my house from top to backside, questioning they might come rejoice with me after the rite. All of that collapsed in a 2D with those 4 poisoned phrases. Best unique human beings. Max ultimately lifted his gaze and stated in a rehearsed-sounding voice, "Mom, it become an intimate thing, very small. Simply the 2 of us and the witnesses." However, I knew it turned into a lie. I saw the pics on social media. I saw Lena's dad and mom proudly posing subsequent to the bride and groom. I saw her siblings toasting with champagne. I noticed Lena's white get dressed, which I had helped finance with the $800 I had given her closing month for her non-public prices. I noticed the whole thing I wasn't presupposed to see. A week later, precisely 7 days after that humiliation, Lena known as me with a very distinct voice. She turned into no longer the assured woman who had excluded me from her wedding. Now she sounded determined, almost pleading. "Renata, the lease is overdue. The landlord is pressuring us and says, if we don't pay this week, he'll kick us out. You forgot to make the switch." Her voice trembled slightly as though the world had been finishing. I was silent for some seconds, remembering all of the instances I had run to the financial institution to make that transfer. All of the instances I had canceled my own plans to make sure they had a roof over their heads. All of the instances I had eaten beans and rice so I should provide them cash for their goals. And now, after they had excluded me from the most critical second in their lives, they'd the audacity to call me as if nothing had happened. "Lena," I said with a peaceful that amazed even me. "Did not I provide you with a warning that I simplest help special people?" The silence on the alternative end of the road became so deep that I could pay attention my own heart beating. For the first time in years, it become now not I who became trembling, however her. "Renade, I don't apprehend," she stammered. "We have been constantly special to you. You're like a second mother to me." Lies. All lies. Wrapped in that candy voice she best used when she needed something. The same voice she had used to ask me for money for the marriage get dressed, for the honeymoon, for the earrings, which I had helped finance without understanding I'd never see the right where they had been exchanged. For such a lot of years, I had this steady feeling of taking walks on eggshells, weighing every phrase, every gesture, every present, hoping to get a crumb of love from my very own son. I used to be the precise mother, the obliging mother in regulation, the silent provider who in no way protested once they dealt with me like I was invisible. But that word, best special people, wakened something in me that were dormant for a ways too long. I had calculated in my head how much cash I had spent on them in the ones 3 years. Between hire, food, gifts, emergencies, and whims, it turned into over $20,000. $20,000 I had taken from my retirement, from my financial savings, from the cash my past due husband had left so I may want to live my final years in peace. And what became all that for? To be dealt with like a stranger by my son's wedding day. That night time after I hung up, I sat on my bed and cried. But they were not tears of disappointment. They were tears of anger, of amassed frustration, of years of silently persisted humiliation. I cried for all of the times they made me feel that my love changed into a burden, my presence an obstacle, my cash the best element I had to provide. I cried for the foolish mom I have been, for the girl who had lost herself, seeking to be necessary to folks who considered her dispensable. When I awoke the next morning, something internal me had changed. It become now not just the pain of betrayal. It was something deeper, chillier. I stood up and checked out myself in the bathroom replicate. The identical tired eyes as usually, the same wrinkles that told testimonies of years of giving love without getting it back. However, there was something else in my gaze, a hardness I did not understand, a willpower that were buried beneath years of compliance. I went to the kitchen and made espresso, as I had every morning for 40 years. But this time, I did not consider calling Max to invite how he had slept. I did not check my smartphone in anticipation of a message from him apologizing for the previous day's humiliation. For the first time in a long term, I used to be my personal first challenge of the day. I sat on the table in which I had so regularly planned surprises for them, counted payments for their prices, and cried silently once the handled me with indifference. Now, this desk could be a witness to something completely distinct. I took out my checkbook, my bank statements, and started out to do the math. I desired to see in precise numbers the quantity of my own foolishness. Monthly lease of $500 accelerated with the aid of 36 months changed into $18,000. Food and supplies about $200 a month become another $7,200. Birthday items, Christmas gifts, anniversary items, at the least $3,000. Lena's scientific emergencies, $800. The auto mortgage they in no way paid me lower back, $2,500. The air conditioner restore in their apartment, $600. The dwelling room furnishings, $1,200. $33,400. That changed into the precise sum of my generosity. $33,400 I had wasted from my husband's inheritance, from my pension, from the savings I had placed apart penny by using penny for many years of sincere work. All that money thrown out the window to preserve adults secure who couldn't even fail to recognize me. The telephone rang and I saw Max's call at the screen. Normally, my coronary heart could have pounded as I ran to answer, hoping he would eventually express regret and give an explanation for that the whole thing had been a misunderstanding. However, this time I permit it ring once, 2 times, 3 instances. Finally, it fell silent, and that I persisted drinking my espresso as though not anything had befell. 10 minutes later, it rang again. This time, it become Lena. I allow it ring, too. Then, a textual content got here from Mac's mother, please solution. We want to speak. I deleted the message without replying. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I decided to go for a stroll. I hadn't finished that in months without a selected reason, without an errand related to them. It was constantly the financial institution for transfers, the supermarket to buy them something they needed. The drugstore for Lena's medicinal drugs. These days, I went for a walk just because I desired to. I walked beyond the park where I had regularly taken Max as a toddler. I remembered that candy boy who hugged me tight and said I used to be the satisfactory mother within the world. Whilst had he become this man who dealt with me like an ATM with emotions? When did I start perplexing love with cash? Whilst did I start to consider I had to buy my own son's affection? At the financial institution, wherein I had so frequently made computerized transfers, I finished in front of the door. The branch supervisor, Mr. Clean, noticed me via the glass and waved. I had regarded him for years. He had processed each one and every of my transfers to Max and Lena. He had watched my account drain month after month to fill theirs. I went internal and walked directly to his workplace. Mr. Klein, I informed him, I want to cancel the automated transfers I have programmed. He looked at me surprised. For 3 years, these transfers have been as ordinary because the dawn. Are you sure, Mrs. Richter? Did something appear? His situation become actual, greater actual than any interest Max had proven in me in latest months. What took place is that I eventually opened my eyes, I answered. I want to cancel everything and that I additionally need facts on a way to defend my accounts. I don't want absolutely everyone else to have access to my money. Whilst Mr. Klein processed the cancellations, my telephone failed to stop ringing. Max, Lena, Max again. It was as though that they had evolved radar to hit upon whilst their supply of income changed into an hazard. I grew to become the telephone off completely. Mrs. Richter, Mr. Klein said as he surpassed me the papers. I make an apology for intruding, but in a majority of these years, I've seen you be very beneficent with your family. I hope you are not being compelled to make those changes. His phrases touched me deeply. This guy, who slightly knew me beyond financial institution transactions, confirmed greater authentic challenge for my properly being than my very own son. I am no longer being pressured, Mr. Klein. On the opposite, I have in the end stopped pressuring myself. After I left the financial institution, I felt surprisingly light, as though I had left a big burden in that workplace. For the first time in years, my cash was completely mine. I had no economic duties to people who noticed me as a resource instead of a person. I went domestic in notion about all of the matters I hadn't finished to thrill Max and Lena. The journeys I hadn't taken to keep cash for them. The pals I now not saw because I was usually available for their emergencies. The pastimes I had given up because every dollar I spent on myself become $1 much less for their wishes. When I got domestic, I discovered 3 vehicles parked in front of my door. Max's, Lena's, and one I did not recognize. I could see movement interior my house via the windows. My blood ran bloodless. They'd keys. I had given them keys because I depended on them. Because I notioned they could sooner or later contend with me simply as I had taken care of them. I took a deep breath before starting the door. It changed into time for the first actual disagreement of my new existence. I opened the door to my residence and saw a scene I will by no means neglect. Max became sitting on my couch together with his head in his fingers. Lena became pacing to and fro like a caged animal, and an older guy I failed to understand was going via papers on my dining desk. My papers, my private documents. What is happening here? I asked in a voice that sounded louder than I expected. All 3 of them checked out me as if I were the intruder in my personal residence. Lena became the primary to speak, and her voice had that determined urgency I had already heard at the smartphone. Renata, thank God you are right here. We want to talk. Mr. Fisher is from the regulation company. We consulted approximately your scenario. My scenario? The query came out of my mouth with a peaceful that amazed me. What situation? I am doing perfectly satisfactory. Max subsequently lifted his head and checked out me with those eyes that after belonged to an innocent child and now best meditated economic panic. Mom, we went to the bank and they informed us you can let all the transfers. Mr. Klein defined which you additionally blocked our get admission to for your money owed. We do not apprehend why you probably did that. Mr. Pfizer, a person in his 50s in a gray healthy and a grin that did not encourage self-belief, approached me with an outstretched hand. Mrs. Richter, I'm Dr. Pfizer, a family law attorney. Your youngsters are worried approximately your mental nicely being and feature requested me to evaluate the situation. I failed to shake his hand. Instead, I went without delay to my dining desk and accumulated all my documents that he were reviewing without my permission. These are my non-public papers. You don't have any proper to take a look at them without my consent. Mom, Max interjected with that condescending voice he had perfected in recent years. We are involved about you. Your conduct has been very odd currently. First, you financially cut us off without an explanation. Then, you don't answer our calls. We suppose you may need professional help. Lena approached and attempted to take my hand with that fake tenderness she reserved for moments while she wanted something. Renee, honey, we understand you're under a number of pressure. Maybe the loneliness is affecting you greater than you watched. At your age, episodes of bewilderment are regular. The phrase confusion echoed in my head like an alarm bell. Now I understood why that they had brought the legal professional. It wasn't about supporting me. It turned into approximately affirming me mentally incompetent and taking manage of my budget. The identical woman who had advised me they only invited special human beings to their wedding ceremony become now treating me like a senile old lady. I'm no longer pressured, I stated with a firmness that silenced all and sundry. I am clearer than I have been in years, and you are going to leave my house proper now. Mr. Fisher interjected with that expert voice attorneys use when they need to sound reasonable. Mrs. Richter, I understand you sense beaten, but your children have a proper to intervene if they accept as true with your ability to make financial decisions is impaired. They have documented numerous concerning behaviors. Regarding behaviors. The snigger that came from my throat turned into horsero, almost merciless. Like what? Identifying that my cash belongs to me? Identifying to no longer finance the lives of adults who deal with me like trash. Lena jumped up as though I had slapped her. We by no means handled you badly. You're a part of our family. The entirety you have will belong to us at some point anyway. We are simply speeding up the method. There has been the naked, unvarnished fact. The entirety I had would at some point belong to them. In their minds, I used to be already lifeless and that they had been just amassing their inheritance in advance. It didn't count number if I had 70 years or 70 days left. To them, I used to be just an ATM with legs that had come to be intricate. Out, I stated, pointing to the door. All three of you get out of my house. Max stood up with that angry childlike face he made while he didn't get his way. Mom, we can't simply leave. We have responsibilities. The hire, the auto bills, the credit scorecard you co-signed for. You cannot just cut us off from at some point to the subsequent. I cannot. My voice rose for the first time inside the complete communique. Who says I can't? For years, I've paid lease that wasn't even in my call. I crammed a fridge in a residence where I used to be now not welcome. I financed a lifestyles that absolutely had no region for me. Mr. Fisher took a folder from his briefcase and positioned it on my table. Mrs. Richter, we have organized a few files that would facilitate this transition. An energy of lawyer that might permit Max and Lena to manipulate your finances extra effectively. This would just be temporary until you sense better. I took the folder and without even commencing it, threw it at once into the trash can. The best transition this is going to happen here is yours to the front door. Lena started out to cry, however they were not tears of disappointment. They had been tears of frustration, of contained rage. You cannot do that to us, Renee. We have been counting on you. We made plans based for your assist. We sold matters. We took on financial responsibilities due to the fact we knew we could assume you. Duties based totally on my cash, I answered. Not on my nicely being, no longer on my happiness, now not on my enterprise, just on my money. And now that I've determined that my cash is better utilized in my own life, I'm a confused vintage girl who needs legal guardianship. Max attempted to method me, however I took a step returned. He changed into now not the boy who ran into my palms when he had nightmares. He turned into a 35-year-old guy who saw his mother as an impediment among himself and a comfortable life financed by way of others. "Mother, we made errors," he stated in a voice that changed into alleged to sound remorseful. The wedding become a false impression. Lena become apprehensive. I was underneath strain. "We can repair this if you simply become reasonable again." Affordable? The phrase tasted bitter in my mouth. Being reasonable manner persevering with to pay to your lifestyles at the same time as you deal with me like a stranger. It way pretending it does not harm to have been excluded from the most crucial day of my simplest son's life. Mr. Fisher packed his papers with the performance of someone who is used to having proposals rejected. "Mrs. Richter, this isn't always over. Your family has legal alternatives. In case you are certainly making irrational choices due to intellectual fitness issues, a choose can determine that you want guardianship." His words have been like a blow. I realized this became no longer only a manipulative own family go-to. It changed into an actual felony chance. They wanted to declare me incompetent to control my own affairs. "Mr. Fisher," I said, looking him directly in the eyes. "I propose you do your studies thoroughly earlier than you threaten a 71-year vintage woman who has controlled her price range perfectly for 40 years, who raised her son by myself after the dying of her husband, who ran a household and labored honorably until retirement, and who until remaining weak financially supported completely successful adults." Lena stopped crying and looked at me with a coldness that sooner or later showed her actual face. "This might not live like this, Renati. We've got rights and legal professionals, too." "Best," I answered. "Hire all of the lawyers you want. Along with your own cash, of path, due to the fact mine is no longer to be had to finance your legal tantrums." The three of them walked to the door with the wounded dignity of individuals who are not used to being advised no. Before he went out, Max grew to become to me one remaining time. "Mom, this is going to stop very badly for you. You will emerge as on my own with nobody to take care of you whilst you actually need it." "Max," I said with deep sadness, but additionally with crystalline readability. "I am already on my own. The difference is that now it's by my very own preference, not by means of your overlook." As I closed the door at the back of them, I stood in my living room, surrounded via the most beautiful silence I had heard in years. It changed into the silence of freedom. That night time, I couldn't sleep, however no longer out of sadness or remorse, however out of adrenaline from having reclaimed manage of my personal life. I lay awake in bed, making plans my next steps like a standard getting ready for a war. If Max and Lena wanted to fight, I might provide them a battle. However, it might be a warfare I'd combat with intelligence, now not with emotion. At 6 o'clock within the morning, I used to be already dressed and prepared to go. My first prevent was the workplace of legal professional, Mr. Weber, a person I had met years ago when I was coping with my husband's will. In contrast to Mr. Pfizer, whom Max and Lena had introduced, Mr. Weber had an impeccable recognition and specialized in protecting the rights of the aged. "Mrs. Artioer," he informed me as I explained the state of affairs, "what your youngsters attempted to do the day gone by is more commonplace than you observed. It is referred to as elder monetary abuse, and it is a federal crime. The truth that they entered your property without permission and reviewed your personal documents additionally constitutes a contravention." His words both calmed and concerned me. They calmed me due to the fact they showed I wasn't crazy, that what had occurred became certainly abusive. They involved me because I realized the situation became extra serious than I had notion. "We should report the whole lot," Mr. Weber persisted. "Every transfer, every gift, whenever they pressured you for cash. We will additionally alternate your will to defend your assets from future manipulation attempts." We spent 3 hours reviewing my financial information. Mr. Weber whistled whilst he noticed the entire sum, $33,403 years. Mrs. Richter, with this money, you can have lived without problems, traveled, and loved your retirement. Rather, you absolutely financed the lives of two adults who didn't even appreciate you enough to invite you to their wedding ceremony. Once I left Mr. Weber's workplace, I had a complete plan. First, I might trade all the locks on my residence. 2D, I might install a safety device with cameras to protect myself from future Marvel visits. Third, I might open a brand new bank account at an extraordinary financial institution wherein they had no touch. And fourth, I'd begin dwelling the existence I had postponed for years. My subsequent forestall changed into the hardware keep. The proprietor, Mr. Summertime, had known me for years due to the fact I used to be constantly shopping for matters to repair Max and Lena's condominium. This time become exclusive. Mrs. RTOR, what brings you here these days? Some other emergency with your son? He asked with the familiarity of someone who had silently witnessed my wasted generosity. No, Mr. Summer. This time it is for my personal residence. I need to trade all of the locks, and that I need them to be of the quality. He looked at me amazed, but requested no questions. While I was choosing the locks, his son Ethan, who hooked up protection structures, came with the aid of. It was Providence in movement. Ethan, I instructed him, I additionally need to put in surveillance cameras, the whole device. The charge isn't always in trouble. Whilst they have been making ready the entirety for the installation the following day, I acquired a call from an unknown range. It became Lena calling from a person else's telephone due to the fact I had blocked her range after the previous day's confrontation. Renata, it is Lena. Please do not hold up. We need to speak like civilized adults. Communicate, I stated dryly. Pay attention, I recognize you are upset about the marriage. It was a mistake. Max and I have pointed out it and we want to make it up to you. How about we've a unique dinner to have a good time our wedding ceremony with you? We are able to do it at your home. Cook dinner collectively like we used to. The manipulation in her phrases was so obvious that I almost had to snicker. Lena, how much rent do you owe precisely? The silence on the opposite give up confirmed that I had hit a nerve. Well, it's 2 months. $1,000 total. But I'm not simply calling for that, Renati. We truly leave out you in our lives. Do you pass over me or my cash? I asked at once. Each, she replied with a surprising honesty. Renat, I won't lie to you. Yes, we want your monetary help, however we adore you, too. You're important to us. If I'm so vital, I said, why wasn't I crucial enough to be at your wedding ceremony? Why am I no longer essential sufficient to get a call that does not ask for cash? While was the closing time you known as me just to invite how I was doing? Any other silence. We each knew the solution. Never. Lena, I am only going to provide an explanation for this to you as soon as. For 3 years, you have got dealt with me like an ATM with emotions. You used me. You ignored me. You humiliated me. And finally, you insulted me inside the worst feasible manner. Now that the money is strolling out, you unexpectedly find out you adore me. Renote, please. I cut her off. There is no please. You made your choice when you decided I wasn't unique sufficient to be at your wedding ceremony. Now I am making mine. I hung up and grew to become the smartphone off absolutely. I failed to want any extra interruptions on my day of liberation. That afternoon, I went to the Splendor Salon I hadn't been to in over a year. I constantly canceled my appointments because Max or Lena wished something pressing or due to the fact the cash I had set aside for myself had become an emergency for them. Mrs. Richter, my favorite hairstylist. Cynthia called out. What a marvel. I concept you had forgotten us. I didn't forget you, Cynthia. I just forgot that I also need to be pampered. I dealt with myself to the overall remedy. cut, coloration, manicure, pedicure. For the first time in years, I spent money on myself without feeling responsible. Whilst Cynthia worked on my hair, she advised me approximately her lifestyles, her kids, her dreams. It changed into fresh to have a communique that did not revolve around Max and Lena's needs. "You appearance lovely, Mrs. Richter," she stated while she changed into done. "However, greater than that, you look loose. Did something excellent manifest?" "Sure, Cynthia." I finally found out to say no. Once I were given home that afternoon, there was an automobile in front of my door that I failed to understand. My coronary heart raced for a moment, questioning Max and Lena might have come returned with reinforcements. However, as I got nearer, I noticed an older woman sitting on the stairs of my porch. "Mrs. Richter," she asked as I got out of the automobile. "Sure, it is me. Am I able to assist you?" "I am Ella Laner Brooks. I live round the corner. We've been acquaintances for years, however we've by no means had a risk to talk. The day gone by, I heard very loud voices in your home, and that I got worried. Is the entirety okay?" Her honest difficulty touched me deeply. Right here became a stranger who showed greater interest in my nicely being than my own son. "Come in, Mrs. Brooks. I will make you a coffee, and I'll let you know a tale you won't consider." Even as I used to be making espresso, I instructed her the complete state of affairs. Eleanor listened without interrupting, nodding sometimes. And when I finished my story, her eyes have been full of tears. "Mrs. Richter," she stated, "you probably did the right aspect. I went through something comparable with my daughter 5 years ago. I also concept it become my obligation to finance her grown-up existence." Cynthia called out. "What a marvel. I concept you had forgotten us." "I didn't forget you, Cynthia. I just forgot that I also need to be pampered. I dealt with myself to the overall remedy. Cut, coloration, manicure, pedicure. For the first time in years, I spent money on myself without feeling responsible. Whilst Cynthia worked on my hair, she advised me